which is how the United States got away with what happened in Guatemala, right? We can just label them all communists, and communists are a political party, so we exterminate them. It's not a genocide because political groups aren't included. What if we target homosexuals? They're not included, right? So there's lots of slippery slopes here and lots of things you have to consider in terms of ambiguity. And I think it's fun, but it's also troubling in some ways. Then there's the problem of law. And that is, simply put, how do we punish? Okay? Let's make some decisions. How do we punish? Who do we punish? All right? To commit the Rwandan genocide, to kill that number of Tutsis and some moderate Hutus, took roughly 800,000 perpetrators. Can you put 800,000 people on trial in any judicial system in the world? Absolutely not. They gave it a good try. It took them 10 years. They only got through 80,000 people. And they had to say, enough. We can't do anymore. We can't fund it. We can't hold them. We can't sentence them. We have no capacity to try that many perpetrators. Well, I think that has to be true in all of these genocides, right? It wasn't just the Nazis, and it wasn't just Hitler. And yet, in Nuremberg, we put on, what, 25, 27 people on trial. We can be liberal and say the Dachau trials, which went after lower level people, that was another 1,700 or so. Okay, so for the entire Holocaust, we went after roughly 1,725 people. Is that all the people that committed the crimes that killed 11 million? Right now, they're actually still trying to go forward in Germany, follow the case. It was announced in the the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. There's 70 new names that have appeared on a list that they're going to try to put on trial, even though all of them, if they're alive, are in their late 80s for the crimes that they committed. But still, the numbers are never going to match. So is that really justice? Who gets away with it? Do the leaders get away with it? Because, hey, the leaders usually go into these international tribunals. We have that in Cambodia, we have that in Rwanda, we have it in Yugoslavia, and the minute you go into the international tribunals, you can't be put to death. Right? The death penalty is an exclusive thing for just a few select nations in the world. We happen to be one. So those people are safe, even if they're convicted. They're going to ride out the rest of their life in a prison cell. I'm not saying it's going to be great, but it's probably better than death. So it's the lower level people who got caught in the national courts who end up being sentenced to death. And many of them are put through that. But again, how many? So maybe instead of punishment, we think about restorative justice, right? Can we somehow, I'm not saying we can restore life. The person who does that is going to be a very wealthy person. But we can restore the community. We can restore some sense of the people who were destroyed. And maybe we should think about that first and foremost, or as in partnership with punishment. I'm not saying that nobody should go on trial because we can't try everybody. That would be ludicrous. But I think we need to do something more. I think we need to give those people an ability to say, you know what, okay, let's think about some commemoration. So some days where we commemorate this. Let's think about some memorials. Let's think about apologies. Maybe apologies can actually be more powerful than we think. They don't all have to be shallow and hollow. So we should do that. Think about some things to elevate that community. We think that the Jewish community, it was just within the past 10 years, the Jewish community recovered its numbers from World War II. So there has to be some kind of support for all of that, right? And I think that we could be really creative about this. And communities are starting to take the reins on their own. Right? Nobody funded the Cambodian Museum from the government of Cambodia in Chicago. That all came from the individuals who said, you know, we need help and we're going to help ourselves. And part of this is a way to commemorate and recognize those who lost their lives in this event. So let's do that. Do we punish nations? If you're in the UN, it's a sovereign body of nations, so the only punishment you really can do is punish nations. Well, maybe we should start leveling some charges and some crimes against nations. Maybe somebody from Guatemala should sue the United States in the International Criminal Courts and say, you know what, we want acknowledgement that it was your CIA, and we want some money. the one thing the United States has, I know we all seem to claim we're broke, but we've got money. We could make things right in some way, shape, or form. Not for those who are dead. None of this is for the dead, but for the living. Okay, and I think that that's a moral obligation that we should have. My last problem then is the problem of psychology. You're looking at me like, okay, this guy's probably half crocked. No, I don't drink on the job yet. We have to have a warped sense of humor to study this. You have to find ways to study this and put this away and compartmentalize this. Imagine the bookshelves at my house, right? I study genocide, my wife studies the Black Plague. Okay? Anybody who walks in the house is immediately suspicious as to whether or not they're leaving alive. And it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition when you think about that. You have to be able to have those moments when you see the humor and the absurdity in the very, very banal and the very depths of horror. Let's face it, folks, I've met murderers, and not just somebody who killed one person. I've met people that I know ordered the execution of hundreds, if not thousands. I've had guns pointed at me twice. Right? Once I was thrown out of Zimbabwe because I was asking questions about where some of the mass graves were, where I could locate some of these hidden sites where people were killed in the caves by being thrown into the caves, and then the green bombers that worked for Mugabe would set tires and gasoline and brush and branches on fire at the mouth of the cave. Basically, hundreds of people would be suffocated, and those who tried to run out would be shot. Then they'd cement them over and bury them, right? So you ask some kinds of questions like that, and the next thing you know, you're on the border of South Africa being told, don't come back. That's something you have to be willing to then, when that kind of stuff happens, yeah, I'm genuinely scared. It's a career for a younger person these days. My wife isn't exactly thrilled with the fact that I'll just run right out and do these kinds of things when I have a family to take care of now. But you have to then, at that moment, sort of find the humor in it, and know that the very fact that I got thrown out is proof that what I was trying to do is important, right? I've had a Turkish soldier point the rifle at me, take the safety off, and I'm standing there saying to myself, "This is Cyprus. This guy can't pull the trigger. I'm an American citizen, damn it. He can't do this." And he starts nudging me with the rifle. And I'm like, okay, I'm not here to test that theory. It's really not worth it to see. I think I'll leave and see what he does. And I turned my back to him, figuring that as a Turkish soldier, he would not be unmensch enough to pull the trigger on somebody behind their back. That was a hell of a gamble, and I'm not sure that it paid off. I'm here, but I'm not sure I would do it again. Right? I'm not sure I would have done in the first place what I was doing for him to do that, and I was clearly snooping around. Those, however, are the moments that when you make that realization that somebody doesn't want me to know what I want to know and what I need to know, and what I think has to come out in order for the rest of the world to say this is something of value, and this is where the healing starts. And so, I tell my students this. I work with students all the time. They come to me, some of them, not all. They say, well, I'm having dreams. I said, well, they're probably not dreams, right? They're nightmares, yes. I'm thinking about this a little too much, or this is a little too sad, or these things are too horrific, and it should happen if you're understanding it. You do have to find a way to walk away from it, either intellectually or sometimes even physically. But what gets my dander up is and this was kind of a good thing in a way, a biology student through another student here related to me that there's nothing intellectual or academic about studying genocide. It's just not as important as something like biology. And how can it have any meaning and relevance? And challenge accepted. I'm not going to stand around and denigrate biology because I'm made up of a bunch of cells, and I respect their importance. But what I will do is keep coming back and saying, you're wrong. Because if we can't reflect on ourselves and we don't know the philosophy of our own lives and the decisions we make and the things that challenge us, then we shouldn't even be around to study biology. And it's in that self-reflection and in all those moments that I think I find the greatest value in studying genocide and wrapping my head around these problems if I possibly can. Because I love problems. I'm a mathematician in a way. I want to solve these problems. I want to understand the problems. What goes into the equation? What goes into the answer? And is there an answer? Sometimes I'm solving for X and I can never seem to find X. But that's what makes genocide, I think, a really exciting discipline. And let me just end by saying there's a lot of people on this campus who will help you get there, not just me. Right? Kyung-un in political science does a class that touches on genocide and mass violence. Judy Ledgerwood in anthropology, who studies Cambodia. She helped bring the Cambodian genocide to light. Heidi Fehrenbach in the history department does human rights issues, which are closely related to genocide and intertwined. On and on and on. There's a bunch of people on this campus where you could put this into a greater course and sequence of study, even though we don't have a genocide studies department. So with that, I'll end. I went longer, but I hope that you have some questions or challenges or thoughts for me, and I'll be open to questions. Yes, sir, Mike.
Dr. Howard, I think we talked about it in the studies class, and I kind of thought about it more. You mentioned the different countries where genocide occurred, but you didn't mention the United States.
Oh, well,
We very specifically, and I know you know this,
yeah.
but maybe the rest of the audience, we very specifically went after a certain race, and we're going after genocide. We're still doing that. We still discriminate. We still limit and control.
Yeah, I wish it was in the United States history textbooks. I mean, I argued last week with a teacher. I said, you know, I think that one of the greatest flaws that happens in high school these days is we teach the Holocaust in U.S. history. He's like, well, that's where I have to put it in. I was like, that's not a good enough reason. It didn't. The United States had very little to do with the Holocaust, and if we had anything to do with it, it was actually by our bystander status allowing it to continue. And then we go in, and I understand what we do to liberate the camps and things, but we made a conscious decision not to intervene in the Holocaust. We were going to win the war, and that was our rationale, okay? So I argue that I don't want the Holocaust in the history textbooks for U.S. history. I want the genocide of Native Americans in there. I mean, we have generals saying, nits make lice, right? Babies make lice. So kill the Indians, kill the children, and therefore we won't have to worry about the Indians. I found, and this is fabulous. I'm not proud of it, but Frank Baum. Everybody knows who L. Frank Baum is, right? What did he write? Wizard of Oz. He happened to be an editor of a newspaper in South Dakota. Let's call it one of those states. And in 1890 and 91, at the time of the Wounded Knee Massacre. And in his editorial, he basically wrote, he said, you know what, the Indians would be better off if we just kill them all. Because we've done so much damage to them now that they're not even human beings. So let's just exterminate them. Let's finish the job, get it done, secure the borders for our people, and save them the embarrassment of having to live second-class lives. I mean, this is the guy that gives us Dorothy. Right? You know, I mean, so absolutely, what we did to Native Americans was reprehensible. We need to acknowledge it as a genocide. If what Australia did is genocide, what we did is genocide. Absolutely.
Well, and you mentioned World War II, what we did to the Japanese with the camps.
Yeah, I mean,
well, and it's endless.
It is. But yes, I think you know, we're perpetrators of genocide. I'm not proud of it. I'm glad I live in a country where I can say that without fear. I mean, if I said that in Turkey, there's a law in Turkey where I would go to jail if I said we committed genocide against the Armenians. Boom, Article 301, it's a legal law, you'd go to jail. And you'd go to, if you know Turkish jails, they're not fun places. Never been in one personally, but so I hear. So, any other questions? I know some of you are looking, you gotta go to class. Let's go back here.
Yeah, you said there are 5 genocides going on right now in the world. What are those 5?
Syria would be one. I definitely think what's happening in Syria is one. Darfur is another. The Nuba Mountains of South Sudan is a third. Where are my references to